If 12 nannies walked out of the same mansion in less than a year, leaving behind a pair of twin boys no one could handle, would you still believe money could buy peace inside a home? If this question grips you, consider subscribing so you never miss the rest of this story. The Thompson estate in Buckhead, Atlanta, was the kind of mansion people whispered about as they drove past its iron gates. Its marble columns gleamed beneath the southern sun, and its manicured lawns stretched like carpets rolled out for royalty. Yet for all its splendor, the house had grown cold, less a home than a museum of wealth. Inside, echoes traveled too far. The voices of children carried down endless corridors, their laughter bouncing off chandeliers before fading into silence. For 7-year-old twins Ethan and Caleb, silence was an enemy. They filled it the only way they knew how, with noise, mischief, and boundless energy. This morning, though, the noise came not from them, but from the sound of a door slamming shut. A suitcase rattled down the front steps. Mrs. Carpenter, their 12th nanny in less than 12 months, marched across the foyer with tears in her eyes.
"Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry,"
she said, barely pausing as she pushed past the butler who tried to stop her. "I can't do this anymore." Marcus Thompson appeared at the top of the staircase, his tailored navy suit a sharp contrast to the disarray below. He was a man who had commanded boardrooms in Silicon Valley and Wall Street alike, a billionaire whose name carried weight in the tech industry. But in this moment, his authority meant nothing. "Mrs. Carpenter, wait, please," Marcus called, his voice carrying down the staircase. "At least tell me what happened this time." The woman turned, her face pale with exhaustion. "Your boys, Mr. Thompson. They locked me in the wine cellar for an hour. An hour! When I finally got out, they had dismantled the security system and reprogrammed the intercom to blare rock music through the entire house. I can't." She pressed the handle of the suitcase harder, as if holding on to her last shred of sanity. "I've worked with difficult children before, but this is something else." Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked past her to the twins standing in the foyer, half hiding behind the banister. Ethan, the more mischievous of the two, wore a grin that was equal parts defiance and curiosity. Caleb, quieter and more analytical, avoided his father's eyes, staring instead at the marble floor. Mrs. Carpenter shook her head and hurried out the door, the wheels of her suitcase bumping loudly against the stone steps. The sound faded until there was only silence again. Ethan broke it first. "She wasn't any fun, anyway." His voice carried a hint of triumph, as if another victory had been won in the ongoing battle against authority. Caleb, however, whispered something under his breath. Marcus stepped closer. "What did you say, Caleb?" The boy finally raised his eyes. They were thoughtful, almost too old for a 7-year-old. "I said, they all leave, Dad. Everyone does." The words struck harder than any accusation. Marcus felt them pierce through the layers of his carefully constructed life. For all his billions, for all the influence he wielded, he could not seem to give his children what they needed most, a stable, loving presence. He descended the staircase slowly, one hand trailing the polished mahogany rail. Ethan scurried backward, ready for a scolding, but Marcus did not raise his voice. Instead, he knelt before them, his expensive suit folding awkwardly on the marble floor. "You two think this is a game?" His voice was low, steady. "Do you think it's funny to drive every nanny away?" Ethan shuffled his feet. "We just wanted someone who didn't boss us around all the time. And someone who didn't look at us like we were broken," Caleb added quietly. Marcus's chest ached at those words. Broken. Was that how his sons saw themselves? Or worse, was that how they believed the world saw them? He reached out, placing a hand on each boy's shoulder. "You're not broken. Do you hear me? You are smart,
and strong, and more than enough. But you can't keep pushing people away. Ethan looked up, mischief dimming for just a moment. Then why does everyone go? Marcus had no answer, not one he could give aloud. Vanessa, his wife, had grown increasingly distant, more concerned with galas and high society appearances than with bedtime stories or scraped knees. And Marcus himself, though present in body, had often been absent in spirit, his mind buried in acquisitions and board meetings. He had given his children the finest tutors, the best toys, the grandest home. But he had failed to give them what every child craved, a sense of family. Caleb slipped his small hand into Ethan's, and together they whispered words that nearly undid him. Anyone you hire will leave too, just like Mom leaves. The marble floor seemed to tilt beneath Marcus. He forced himself to steady his breathing. This was not just about finding another nanny. This was about breaking a cycle that was slowly crushing his son's sense of security. He stood, straightening his jacket, determination replacing despair. For too long, he had treated childcare like another business transaction: hire, evaluate, replace. But family was not a corporation. Children could not be managed like employees. This time, things had to be different. Listen to me, both of you, Marcus said, his voice stronger now. I will not let anyone else walk away from you, not if I can help it. We don't need another nanny. We need someone who belongs here. Someone who sees you not as a job, but as family. Ethan tilted his head. Like a mom? Marcus hesitated. The word cut deep, opening wounds he had long ignored. Vanessa was still legally their mother, but she had been absent in every way that mattered. The thought of replacing her felt disloyal, yet he could not deny the truth in Ethan's innocent question. Maybe not a mom, Marcus said carefully, but someone who can love you the way family does. Caleb studied his father, his analytical mind parsing every word. Do you promise you won't quit on us, Dad? Marcus knelt again, pulling both boys into his arms. I promise. I will never quit on you. Not ever. For the first time that morning, the twins did not resist his embrace. Ethan's grin softened, and Caleb rested his head against Marcus's shoulder. In the quiet that followed, Marcus felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. As the sunlight poured through the towering windows, gilding the foyer in gold, Marcus knew that his next decision would change everything. He could no longer afford to hire strangers to manage his children. He had to find someone who would stay. Someone who could see beyond the chaos to the hearts of two little boys who simply wanted to be loved. And so, as the 12th nanny's footsteps faded into memory, Marcus Thompson made a silent vow. He would not rest until he found the person who could turn his mansion back into a home. Not an employee, not a caretaker, but family. The next morning in Buckhead was quiet, the kind of spring day where azaleas lined the driveways like brushstrokes of pink and white across the neighborhood. From the outside, the Thompson estate looked as invincible as ever. But inside its walls, Marcus Thompson sat at the breakfast table staring at a stack of resumes with a weariness he couldn't hide. The butler, Mr. Henry, stood patiently beside him, hands folded, his silver hair catching the light. These are the applicants, sir. 27 in total, all highly experienced. Marcus sifted through the papers. Nannies with degrees in child psychology, others who had worked for senators' children, some who listed specialties like equestrian therapy or Mandarin immersion. On paper, they were impeccable. Yet he felt only dread. What does it matter if the boys will drive them away in a week, Marcus muttered, setting the pile aside. They don't need a resume, they need... He paused, unsure how to finish the thought. Love? Stability? A miracle? As if on cue, Ethan ran into the dining room.
a cape fashioned from a pillowcase tied around his neck.
Dad, watch this!
He leapt from one chair to another, arms spread wide like a superhero. Caleb followed, holding a notebook where he had carefully drawn schematics of Ethan's flight path. He adjusted his glasses and said seriously, "Technically, if he hits the chandelier, we'll need to call a contractor again." Marcus sighed. "Boys," but before he could scold them, Mr. Henry cleared his throat. "Sir, there's a woman at the gate. She says she's here about the nanny position." Marcus frowned. "Another one already? Did she send her resume?" "No, sir, she doesn't have one." That was unusual. Everyone who applied for the Thompson household came with a dossier thick as a law book. Marcus rose, curiosity piqued. "Send her in." Minutes later, the heavy front doors opened to reveal a young woman standing quietly in the foyer. She was not what Marcus expected. She wore no expensive suit or crisp white uniform, just a simple lavender blouse tucked into faded jeans. Her shoes had seen better days. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, a few strands falling across her face. But her eyes, those struck Marcus most. They were warm, steady, the kind of eyes that seemed to listen before a word was spoken.
Mr. Thompson?
She asked softly. "Yes. And you are?" "Monica Williams." She clasped her hands together. "I heard you're looking for someone to help with your boys." Marcus gestured toward the grand table stacked with resumes. "We've had trouble keeping people. What makes you think you can do what 12 others couldn't?" Monica hesitated, then said, "I don't have a resume to impress you, no degrees in psychology, no years in fancy households. What I do have is patience, and a way of seeing children that goes beyond behavior." From the hallway, Ethan whispered to Caleb, loud enough for all to hear, "Let's test her." The twins exchanged a mischievous glance, then dashed into the room. Ethan ran in circles, knocking over a vase of tulips. Caleb quickly tied one end of his shoelace to the chair leg and accidentally tripped in front of Monica. It was a trick they had used before. Most nannies would gasp, scold, or try to catch them frantically. Monica did none of those things. Instead, she knelt beside Caleb, her face calm. "Shoelaces can be sneaky, can't they?" she said, carefully untangling the knot. "Sometimes they just want to trip us up, but if we slow down, they lose." Caleb blinked. He hadn't expected kindness. Then she turned to Ethan, who had frozen mid-sprint, watching her warily. She looked at the spilled tulips, then back at him. "You like to make an entrance, don't you?" Ethan tilted his head. "You're not mad?" "Flowers are meant to fall eventually," Monica said with a shrug. "At least these got to dance a little first." For the first time in weeks, Ethan laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh. Caleb, astonished, joined him. They looked at each other as if silently agreeing. She's different. Marcus, still standing near the table, felt his throat tighten. He had watched countless nannies fail this very test. Monica had turned it into a moment of connection. "Boys," he said slowly, "what do you think?" Caleb spoke first, surprising everyone. "I think she doesn't look at us like we're broken." Ethan nodded, his grin wide. "Yeah. Can we keep her, Dad?" Monica glanced between them, her expression soft but serious. "I'm not here to be kept. I'm here to care, if you'll let me." The room grew quiet. Even Mr. Henry seemed moved. Marcus studied her carefully. He was not a man who trusted easily, not after the betrayals and the distance that had carved their family into fragile pieces. But something in Monica's presence disarmed him. It wasn't her words. It was the way the boys leaned closer, as though they recognized something safe in her. "You understand this isn't an easy job," Marcus said. "My sons can be..." Human, Monica interrupted gently. They're human. That's enough. Ethan beamed. Caleb adjusted his glasses but smiled too, small and rare. Marcus inhaled slowly. Then he made a decision that startled even himself. You'll have a trial week. No paperwork, no resume. Just you and them. If it works, you stay. Monica nodded. That's all I ask. That afternoon, the house felt different. Marcus found himself watching from the doorway as Monica joined the twins in the sunlit backyard. She didn't direct them or try to impose structure right away. Instead, she listened as Ethan explained the rules of his invented superhero game, and she actually followed along. When Caleb suggested they could map the yard as if it were uncharted territory, she pulled a notebook from her pocket and drew with him. By dinner, something remarkable happened. Both boys sat at the table side by side without their usual squabbles. Monica set down 2 plates of simple sandwiches, cut into triangles. Ethan devoured his enthusiastically. Caleb took smaller bites but didn't push the plate away. Marcus, watching from across the table, felt something stir. Peace. A fragile, tentative peace he hadn't seen in years. After the boys were tucked into bed that night, Marcus found Monica in the kitchen rinsing dishes. She hummed softly, a tune he couldn't place. "Why did you come here without a resume?" he asked quietly. She dried her hands on a towel. "Because resumes don't tell the truth. They can list jobs, degrees, references, but they can't show you whether someone will stay when things get hard." Marcus studied her profile. There was something in her tone, a weight behind the words, as if she knew from experience what it meant to stay or to be abandoned. "You plan to stay?" he asked. She looked at him, her eyes steady. "If they'll have me." Later that night, Marcus stood by the large window of his study, gazing at the city lights of Atlanta glowing in the distance. His reflection in the glass looked older than his 38 years, but behind him, echoing faintly through the halls, he could hear it, the quiet sound of twins breathing in unison, fast asleep. For the first time in months, the Thompson mansion felt less like a cavern and more like a home. And all because a woman with no resume had walked through its door. The following morning broke with soft Atlanta sunlight filtering through tall windows, brushing the Thompson mansion in golden warmth. Yet the air inside was uncertain. The twins, Ethan with his restless bursts of energy, and Caleb with his cautious watchfulness, sat at the long breakfast table, staring at their plates as though awaiting another tedious ritual. Marcus sipped his coffee quietly, eyeing Monica from across the kitchen. She had been in the house less than 24 hours, and yet there was already a tension, an expectancy that hovered in the air. Could she really last longer than the others? The last 11 nannies had attempted the same strategy: discipline at dawn, rigid breakfast routines, a heavy hand on manners. None of them had survived the boys' sabotage. Pancakes in the dog's bowl, orange juice poured into the fish tank, maple syrup glued to the piano keys. The list of their breakfast rebellions could have filled a book. Marcus prepared himself for another morning of chaos. But Monica walked into the kitchen carrying a bowl so bright, so startling, that all 3 Thompsons froze. The batter inside was not golden yellow. It was purple. Ethan's eyes widened with delight. Caleb adjusted his glasses, suspicious. Marcus frowned. "What on earth is that?" "Breakfast," Monica said simply, her lips curving in a secretive smile. She ladled the thick violet batter onto the hot skillet. The sizzling filled the room, releasing a faint aroma of bubble gum. "Bubble gum?" Ethan nearly leapt out of his chair. "No way, you can't eat bubble gum." Monica glanced at him. "Who says you can't? I found a way. Special extract. Safe, sweet, and a little mischievous, kind of like you." Ethan clapped his hands, practically vibrating with excitement. Caleb, however, folded his arms. "Food isn't supposed to be purple, except grapes. This looks
unnatural. Monica flipped the pancake gracefully, letting the underside land with a satisfying hiss. She set the first plate in front of Ethan, who devoured it in seconds, syrup dripping from his chin. "Best pancake ever," he announced, his mouth full. Caleb scowled. "It's probably terrible for you." "Or," Monica said gently, placing a plate in front of him, "it might be the one thing that proves not everything unusual is dangerous. Maybe it's just fun." Caleb hesitated. His cautious nature often waged war against his curiosity. He poked the pancake with his fork, examined the strange shade of purple, then sniffed. Against his better judgment, he took a tiny bite. For a moment, his face remained unreadable. Then the corner of his mouth twitched upward. Ethan pointed at him triumphantly. "Ha! You like it!" Caleb quickly composed himself. "It's tolerable." But his fork kept moving until the pancake disappeared. Marcus watched in stunned silence. Never, not once, had breakfast gone this smoothly. Usually it ended with slammed plates, tears, or lectures. But now, the two boys were eating in peace, laughing between bites of candy-scented pancakes. Monica sat with them, her own plate untouched, as if savoring their joy instead. When Caleb finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Why did you do this? The purple thing?" Monica looked at him steadily. "Because sometimes when life feels too heavy, you need something unexpected to remind you it's still okay to laugh. Purple pancakes don't solve problems, but they remind us that problems don't have to win every morning." The twins grew unusually quiet, absorbing her words. Marcus's throat tightened. He had spent fortunes on therapists, tutors, consultants, people who dissected his son's behavior in sterile terms. Yet here was a woman with no resume, feeding them purple pancakes, teaching them more in 10 minutes than professionals had in months. After breakfast, Ethan and Caleb surprised even themselves. Instead of running off in opposite directions, they lingered in the kitchen, helping Monica clear the dishes. Ethan wiped the counter with reckless swipes of a towel, while Caleb carefully stacked plates in near-perfect alignment. Marcus stood by the doorway, stunned. They had never done chores willingly. Later that morning, the three of them migrated to the family room. Monica sat on the floor with the boys, pulling out colored pencils and paper. She suggested they draw the most impossible breakfast you can imagine. Ethan sketched a plate of pancakes that sprouted wings and flew across the room. Caleb, ever the scientist, drew a precise diagram of a machine that could make every food purple on command. Their laughter filled the air, rising to the rafters. Marcus retreated into his study, closing the door but not fully shutting out the sound. He leaned against his desk, his chest heavy. For the first time in years, the house was alive. That evening, as the city lights twinkled outside, Marcus invited Monica to join him in the garden. The boys had finally fallen asleep without protest, lulled by Monica's bedtime story about two explorers searching for the lost color of laughter. They walked along the stone path lined with roses, the air fragrant and cool. "I don't understand it," Marcus admitted, his hands tucked in his pockets. "They fought everyone who ever came into this house. But with you, it's like they've known you forever." Monica smiled faintly. "Children don't care about resumes. They care about whether you see them, whether you're willing to sit in their chaos and not run away." Marcus glanced at her. "You're not afraid of their chaos?" She shook her head. "Chaos is just a louder form of pain. If you listen closely, it always tells you what a child really needs." Her words echoed in him long after they walked back inside. The next day, the purple pancakes became a ritual. Ethan would leap out of bed shouting, "Purple power!" while Caleb pretended to disapprove, though he secretly looked forward to the ritual as much as his brother. Breakfast became their anchor.
The one time each morning where both boys sat together without fighting. One morning, Marcus entered the kitchen to find Ethan smearing batter across his cheeks like war paint, while Caleb tried to calculate the exact ratio of syrup to pancake for optimal taste distribution. Monica laughed, not the forced, brittle laugh of a tired caretaker, but the warm laugh of someone who genuinely enjoyed them. Marcus couldn't help but laugh, too. For weeks, the Thompson mansion had echoed only with tension. Now it pulsed with life. The twins no longer schemed to drive Monica away. Instead, they invented games to keep her near. And Marcus, watching quietly, realized something he hadn't dared hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, she wouldn't leave. One evening, after the boys had fallen asleep, Marcus found himself lingering in the kitchen where Monica was cleaning up. The scent of maple syrup and bubblegum still clung faintly in the air. "You know," Marcus said quietly, "they've never finished a meal without fighting before. Never. Until you." Monica dried a plate and set it gently on the counter. "It's not me. It's them. They just needed permission to laugh." Marcus studied her, the weight of his gratitude difficult to articulate. He had spent years building empires, yet he couldn't build peace inside his own home. Monica had done it in a week, with nothing more than kindness and purple pancakes. For the first time in years, Marcus allowed himself to feel hope, not the fleeting kind that came with new hires, but a deeper, sturdier hope. And it began, strangely enough, with breakfast. The sound of laughter drifted through the marble halls of the Thompson estate like sunlight sneaking into a darkened room. For weeks now, mornings had begun with purple pancakes, and nights had ended with stories spun from Monica's imagination. Ethan and Caleb were no longer shadows darting through the corridors. They were children again, alive with curiosity. But where the boys bloomed, another part of the household withered. Vanessa Thompson returned from Boston that evening, her heels clicking sharply against the foyer's polished floor. She was striking, impeccably dressed in a tailored ivory suit, her hair styled for the gala she had just attended. She looked every bit the society woman she aspired to be, polished, untouchable, and perfectly composed. Yet beneath her poise was a simmering discontent. She paused in the doorway of the dining room, her eyes narrowing as she spotted Monica sitting at the table with the twins. Caleb was bent over a jigsaw puzzle, carefully aligning the edges, while Ethan perched on his chair, telling Monica a long, exaggerated story about his superhero pancake cape. Both boys were laughing freely, their defenses lowered, their trust offered without hesitation. Vanessa's lips thinned. "What's this?" Ethan looked up innocently. "Dinner." Her gaze cut toward Monica like a blade. "I wasn't speaking to you, Ethan. I was asking why a stranger is sitting at my children's table." Marcus entered then, loosening his tie after a late meeting. He froze at the tension in the air. "Vanessa." "You're home." "Obviously," she said coolly. "And apparently I've walked into some new arrangement." She gestured at Monica with a manicured hand. Monica rose quietly. "I'll clear the plates." But Ethan protested, clutching her sleeve. "No, stay," Caleb added softly. "Please." The room grew still. Vanessa's gaze snapped to Marcus. "Care to explain?" Marcus exhaled, steadying himself. "This is Monica Williams. She's been helping with the boys." Vanessa's laugh was sharp. "Helping? Or replacing me?" "Don't," Marcus warned, his tone low. "You know you haven't been here." Her eyes flashed. "I've been working to secure their future. The right schools, the right circles." "They don't need circles," Marcus interrupted, his voice rising. "They need parents." The boys stared wide-eyed, unused to seeing their father's temper aimed at anyone but them. Ethan instinctively reached for Caleb's hand beneath the table, and Caleb squeezed back. Monica set the dishes down gently and slipped toward the kitchen, trying not to intrude, but she couldn't help overhearing. Vanessa's voice dropped, icy and precise. Do you think love alone will prepare them for the world? Without elite training, without advanced placement, without every advantage money can buy, they'll be swallowed whole. Children of billionaires are expected to excel. Marcus shook his head. No, they're expected to live. And you can't buy that. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his silence. He had let Vanessa dictate so much. Lessons, tutors, appearances. But watching the boys slowly reclaim joy through Monica's presence had opened his eyes. He couldn't go back to cold schedules and perfection. Vanessa straightened her posture. They'll attend the Advanced Piano Conservatory in Boston this summer. Caleb has the analytical mind for accelerated math programs. Ethan can channel his energy into competitive sports. Monica, or whoever she is not qualified to make decisions for my children. Our children, Marcus corrected, his voice hard. And I won't let you force them into cages of your ambition. The silence that followed was thunderous. Ethan's eyes darted nervously between them. Dad, he whispered, are you going to fight forever? Caleb, quieter but sharper, whispered, maybe that's why everyone leaves. The words cut Marcus deeper than Vanessa's barbs ever could. He turned to his sons, kneeling beside them. No, I won't leave. Not you, not your brother. I promise. Vanessa scoffed. Promises are cheap. Discipline is priceless. Discipline without love is cruelty, Marcus said firmly. And I won't stand by while you call it parenting. The boys clung tighter to Monica as she returned to the table, their small hands gripping her as though she were an anchor in the storm. Vanessa saw it, the way they leaned into her, the way their eyes softened only in her presence, and fury burned behind her polished mask. Later that night, when the children were asleep, Marcus and Vanessa faced each other in the study. You've changed, Vanessa said, pacing across the Persian rug. You used to understand. Image mattered. Results mattered. That's what kept us at the top. Marcus leaned against his desk, weary but resolute. I used to believe success could protect us. But success without family is empty. Look at our boys, Vanessa. They don't need a resume. They need someone who sees them. For the first time in years, they're happy. Because of her? Vanessa's voice cracked with disdain. Yes, Marcus admitted, surprising himself with the ease of the truth. Because of her. Vanessa's face hardened. Then maybe you've already chosen. The following days were uneasy. Vanessa grew sharper, more insistent, enrolling the boys in trial classes and pushing practice schedules onto the calendar. Monica resisted gently, her calm voice firm but never combative. Children need room to play. Pressure at this age will break them. Marcus found himself caught between two worlds, the polished future Vanessa envisioned and the messy, laughter-filled present Monica defended. The twins, however, were not conflicted. They clung to Monica, refusing the rigid piano lessons, resisting the tutors. Ethan declared, "Purple pancakes are better than math." Caleb, more tactful, simply said, "I'd rather learn from someone who smiles." One evening, Vanessa attempted to drag the boys to a networking gala. Ethan squirmed out of his suit jacket, shouting, "I don't want to be a robot!" Caleb hid behind Monica, whispering, "Please don't make us go." Marcus stepped between them and Vanessa. His voice was calm, but iron lay beneath. Enough. They stay. The shock on Vanessa's face was palpable. Never before had Marcus defied her so openly. The twins watched in silence, realizing for the first time that their father was choosing them over appearances. Ethan's eyes glistened. Caleb, who rarely cried, let out a small sob of relief. Monica rested her hands gently on their shoulders. That night, as Marcus tucked them in, Ethan asked in a trembling voice, "You won't let her send us away, right?" Marcus kissed his forehead. "Never." Caleb whispered, "Then maybe we're not broken after all." Marcus's throat closed, but he nodded. "No, son. You were never broken. You just needed someone to believe in you." And for the first time in years, Marcus believed it too. The cracks in the marriage widened with each passing day. Vanessa poured herself deeper into the world of charity galas and private clubs, while Marcus found himself lingering longer in the kitchen with Monica and the boys. He began to realize that the house was not simply divided, it was splitting apart entirely. But in those cracks, something new was growing. Ethan's laughter, Caleb's shy smiles, Monica's quiet presence, all of it stitched together the beginnings of a family that had been waiting to exist. And Marcus knew the fracture with Vanessa was irreversible. But perhaps, through that fracture, the truth of love and family could finally take root. The rain fell hard against the windows of the Thompson estate that night, streaking down the glass like lines of grief. Marcus stood alone in his study, staring at a series of documents spread across his desk. His reflection in the window looked tired, older than his 38 years. The words on the papers were ones he had crafted himself. Rumors of failed investments, whispers of crumbling assets, legal notices of bankruptcy, all carefully arranged to appear devastatingly real. It was a test. He needed to know who would stay when the wealth vanished, when the empire collapsed. For too long, he had been surrounded by people who measured loyalty in dollars. Vanessa had grown more distant by the day, her heart tethered to galas and connections rather than to her children. He wondered, would she stay if the money were gone? Would anyone? Marcus closed the file and whispered into the empty room, "It's time to find out." The following morning, the mansion was a storm of whispers. News spread quickly in Atlanta's elite circles. The Thompson fortune, once unshakable, was rumored to be falling apart. By noon, Marcus's phone was flooded with calls from investors, colleagues, so-called friends. Most were thinly veiled demands, their voices sharp with panic. Vanessa arrived home from yet another luncheon, her heels striking the marble floor with more force than usual. She stormed into Marcus's study, waving her phone.
"What is this?" she demanded. "I've had 3 calls already. People are saying you've lost everything. Tell me it's not true." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "What if it is true?" Her face paled. "You can't be serious. Do you know what this means for us? For me?" "For the boys," Marcus corrected softly. "Do you know what it means for them?" Vanessa's hands trembled as she set her phone down on the desk. "We can't live like ordinary people. I won't."
"If this is real, Marcus, then I'm done. I won't stay in a crumbling house with no future." The words were sharper than the rain against the glass. Marcus watched her carefully. In some part of him, he had expected this, yet hearing it aloud still cut deep. "So you'll walk away. Just like that." Her chin lifted. "I married into a life, Marcus. A promise of wealth, of power, of never having to worry. If that's gone, then so is everything between us." She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She simply turned, her heels clicking like a countdown, and left the room. That evening, Ethan and Caleb sat curled together on the couch in the family room, their usual chatter muted by the tension in the air. The storm outside had slowed to a drizzle, but inside, the silence weighed heavily. "Dad?" Ethan finally asked, his small voice trembling. "Is it true?" Did we lose everything? Marcus knelt before them, his heart aching. We may have lost money, but not everything. Not what matters. Caleb's eyes filled with tears he tried to hide. Does that mean you'll leave too? Like Mom? The words hit harder than any financial blow. Marcus pulled them both into his arms, holding them tightly. No, never. Money comes and goes, but I will never walk away from you. You are my sons, my life, no matter what happens. Ethan's voice broke as he asked the question Marcus feared most. Promise? Marcus pressed his forehead to his son's. I promise. I will never abandon you. The twins clung to him then, Ethan sobbing openly, Caleb silent but shaking. Marcus held them as if sheer will could shield them from every storm. Monica appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with concern. She had heard enough to understand. Quietly, she crossed the room and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You don't have to carry this alone. He looked up at her, weary. You should go, Monica. If this is too much, if the mansion, the wealth, everything collapses, you don't need to stay. Her gaze did not waver. I'm not here for the mansion, or the wealth. I'm here for them. She glanced at the twins nestled in his arms. And for you? Marcus's chest tightened. The weight of her words was heavier than gold. For the first time in years, he felt seen. Not as a billionaire, not as a provider, but as a father trying desperately to hold his family together. Monica knelt beside him, gently smoothing Caleb's hair, then Ethan's. This isn't a job to me, Marcus. This is family. The boys leaned into her touch, their small bodies relaxing. For the first time that day, they felt safe. The following week was a blur of headlines. Thompson Empire collapses, read one article. From tech titan to bankrupt, speculated another. Vanessa filed for divorce swiftly, her attorney delivering the papers to Marcus's office without ceremony. Alongside them was a chilling note. I want nothing but the settlement. The boys are your responsibility now. Marcus read the words with a mixture of relief and grief. She had chosen her path, but in doing so, she had abandoned her sons completely. That night, Marcus sat by the fire with Monica after the boys had gone to bed. The flames flickered across her face, casting shadows in her eyes. Why did you stay? He asked quietly. You could have left when everyone else did. Monica hesitated, her hands folded in her lap. Because I know what it feels like to be left behind. And I swore, if I ever had the chance, I wouldn't let children feel that way. Her voice trembled on the last words, betraying a pain she rarely revealed. Marcus studied her, realization dawning slowly. There was more to her story, more than the warmth she gave so freely. He wanted to ask, but something in her eyes told him now was not the time. Instead, he simply said, Thank you. Monica looked at him, her lips curving into a small, sad smile. Don't thank me. Just be here. That's all they need. Days turned into weeks. The outside world buzzed with rumors, but inside the mansion, a new rhythm emerged. Gone were the stiff dinner parties and forced piano recitals. In their place were board games spread across the living room floor, laughter echoing down hallways once cold, and quiet nights where Ethan and Caleb fell asleep to Monica's soft humming. It wasn't wealth that bound them now. It was something stronger. One evening, as Marcus tucked the boys in, Ethan looked up at him with wide eyes. Dad, even if we're poor, will you still love us? Marcus's throat tightened. Especially then. Because love isn't about what we have, it's about who we are. And you, my sons, are everything. Caleb, usually so logical, whispered,
Then maybe we're rich in the right way.
Marcus kissed their foreheads, his heart swelling with pride and sorrow all at once. Yes, rich in love, rich in family. He closed their bedroom door softly, the sound of their even breathing following him into the hallway. For the first time in years, Marcus felt at peace. He had lost a fortune, but he had gained something far greater, and he knew this was only the beginning. The sun had barely risen over Atlanta, yet the Thompson estate was already alive with whispers. Monica moved quietly through the kitchen, her hands steady as she prepared breakfast, though her heart beat with unease. Something had changed. The mansion, once echoing with Vanessa's footsteps and sharp commands, was now quieter. Yet the silence wasn't peace. It was expectation, hanging heavy, waiting for truth to surface. Marcus entered, wearing yesterday's weariness like an unshaken shadow. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his jaw unshaven. For weeks he had carried the facade of a man defeated, bankrupt, abandoned by his wife. And Monica had stayed. She had steadied the boys when their world wobbled, had filled the hollows of their fear with pancakes, laughter, and calm hands. But last night, Marcus had stared at the fire too long. He had spoken too softly, as though words were building against his will. And now, he could no longer hold them back. When Ethan and Caleb bounded into the kitchen that morning, ready for their ritual of purple power pancakes, Marcus stopped them with a raised hand. Boys, eat slowly today. There's something I need to say. They froze. Ethan tilted his head. Suspicious. Caleb adjusted his glasses nervously. Monica looked up, sensing the gravity in his voice. Marcus inhaled deeply, his eyes fixed on the woman who had carried their fractured family on her shoulders. The bankruptcy. It wasn't real. The words cracked open the room like thunder. Ethan blinked. What do you mean, not real? Marcus's voice was quiet, steady. It was a test. I made it look like we'd lost everything because I needed to know who would stay. I needed to see if people were here for us or for the money. Caleb's fork clattered to his plate. So, Mom left because you made her think we were broke? Marcus nodded, guilt weighing every syllable. Yes. Ethan's face twisted with confusion. But we cried. We thought we were poor. You let us think we were going to lose everything. I know, Marcus whispered, and I'm sorry. I thought I was protecting you. But I hurt you instead. The room was still until Caleb spoke in the smallest voice. So all that time, you lied to us. Marcus's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to soften it, but the truth stood unflinching. Yes, I lied, and I regret it. The boy's eyes burned with betrayal, but it was Monica who rose slowly, her hands trembling as she set down a dishcloth. You lied to them, she said, her voice low. Then her eyes met his, and something deeper flared. You lied to me! Marcus's breath caught. Monica! Her voice broke through, steady but trembling. I stayed when your world crumbled. I told you this wasn't a job, it was family. I believed in you, Marcus, in your struggle, in your pain. And now you tell me it was an experiment? The twins looked from one to the other, their eyes wide. Ethan muttered, Don't fight, but neither adult could stop. Marcus took a step toward her. I wasn't testing you, not you. I knew you were different. I felt it from the moment you walked through that door. But I had to see the truth about Vanessa, about everyone else. Monica shook her head, her eyes glistening. And what about my truth? Do you know how much it costs someone like me to stay when everyone else walks away? Do you know what it took to trust you? And now you've torn it down with one confession. Ethan's voice cracked. Monica, don't leave. He darted forward, wrapping his arms around her waist. Caleb followed, clutching at her hand, whispering through tears, If you go, we'll lose a mom again. The plea silenced the room. Monica's composure cracked as hot tears filled her eyes. She knelt, pulling the boys close, her voice breaking. I never wanted to be another person who left you. Never. You two are the light I didn't know I needed. You made me family before I even realized it. The twins clung tighter. Marcus's heart wrenched as he watched the woman who had healed his sons crumble beneath the weight of his deception. He sank to his knees beside them, his voice raw. Monica, I've made mistakes, but losing you would be the greatest one of all. I see now, you're not just their anchor. You're mine. Her tears fell freely as she shook her head. You don't get to say that after lying. He reached for her hands, steadying them in his. Then let me say this. I love you. Not because you stayed during the storm, not because of what you've done for my sons, but because of who you are. You are the woman I've searched for without knowing, and I don't want this house, this life, or this future without you. Ethan and Caleb stared in silence, their breaths caught. Ethan whispered, Did he just say love? Caleb nodded slowly, his analytical mind stunned into stillness. Monica's chest rose and fell, her tears shimmering in the morning light. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she let out a broken laugh, bitter and tender all at once. You make it impossible to leave, Marcus. He pressed her hands to his heart. Then stay, not as a nanny, not as an employee, as family. The boys broke the silence, Ethan with his wide grin and Caleb with trembling relief. They threw themselves into the embrace, tangling their small arms around Marcus and Monica both. And in that tangled moment, something broke open. The pretense of money, the walls of power, the sharp edges of betrayal, none of it mattered. What mattered was the warmth of four people clinging to each other, building a family not from wealth, but from choice. Later that night, the mansion felt different. No chandelier could outshine the quiet glow that filled the halls. Marcus sat in the living room with Monica beside him. The boys sprawled across the carpet, asleep after a long day of tears and laughter. He looked at her profile, the way her hair caught the lamplight. You're still angry, he said softly. She didn't deny it. Yes, but anger means I care. If I didn't, I'd already be gone. He reached for her hand, tentative. Then let me earn it back, not with money, not with promises, but with presence. Her eyes softened. We'll see. Yet even as she said it, she leaned into his shoulder, her exhaustion giving way to trust. Marcus closed his eyes, relief flooding him. For the first time since his deception, he felt forgiveness stirring. Not fully formed, not yet complete, but alive. The hearts in that mansion had been unveiled, and what they revealed was not perfection, but possibility. Atlanta's botanical garden shimmered like a dream that evening, every path lined with glowing lanterns, every tree wrapped in strings of golden lights. The city skyline flickered in the distance, but within these grounds the world seemed hushed, sacred. Marcus had planned every detail. For weeks he had worked in secret with Ethan and Caleb, turning their excitement into part of the surprise. The boys whispered late at night, scribbled drawings of rings and flowers, and giggled as they hid supplies from Monica's watchful eyes. Now, as twilight deepened into velvet night, Monica walked between the twins, each boy holding one of her hands. They had insisted she wear the soft blue dress Marcus had secretly purchased, simple but graceful, a color that caught the light like water. "Where are we going?" she asked, smiling warily at their conspiratorial grins. "You'll see," Ethan said, barely containing himself. Caleb, more reserved, adjusted his glasses and added, "It's a surprise. But it's important." Her heart stirred with unease and anticipation. She had seen their whispers, their stolen glances, their excitement bubbling under the surface. But she couldn't have imagined what awaited her. When they reached the heart of the garden, Monica stopped in awe. The lawn stretched wide, every corner sparkling with fairy lights strung high in the branches. Lanterns floated in the fountain, casting rippling reflections across the water. And at the center of it all stood Marcus, waiting. He wore a suit, but not the stiff armor of corporate boardrooms. This was softer, open, as though he had chosen it not for appearances, but for her. In his hand he held nothing yet. His eyes, however, held everything. Ethan tugged Monica forward. Caleb slipped away for a moment, fumbling with his pocket. The twins stepped to Marcus's side. Ethan produced a folded sheet of paper, scrawled in his messy handwriting, "Will you be our mom?" Caleb, shy but determined, offered a ring, crafted from folded paper, carefully shaped with the precision of his small, analytical hands. Monica gasped, her throat tightening. Marcus stepped closer, his voice low, steady, carrying the weight of everything they had endured. "Monica Williams, you walked into our lives without a resume, without promises, without anything but your heart. And in that, you gave my sons what money, tutors, and luxury could not. A family. You taught them to laugh again. You taught me to hope again. Tonight, I'm asking not just for myself, but for Ethan and Caleb. Will you stay with us? Will you be our home?" The world blurred through Monica's tears. She looked at the boys first, Ethan's eager grin, Caleb's trembling hands, both of them holding their breath as though her answer would decide the shape of their lives. Then she looked at Marcus, whose steady gaze carried no performance, no facade, only love. Her heart, long guarded, surrendered. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, through tears, "Yes." Ethan whooped, leaping into the air. Caleb exhaled a long, shaky sigh, slipping the paper ring onto Monica's finger with solemn pride. Marcus pulled her into his arms, the twins wrapping around them in a tangle of laughter and tears. For one luminous moment, the family they had been piecing together stood whole beneath the glowing canopy of lights. But just as the night reached its peak, a voice sliced through the joy. "Marcus." The four of them turned. Standing at the edge of the garden, her face pale but resolute, was Vanessa. She had not been invited, yet here she was, her designer heels sinking into the grass, her diamond earrings catching the lantern glow. Her eyes fixed on Marcus, then shifted to Monica with a bitterness that curdled the air. "You can't be serious," she said, her tone trembling with disbelief. "Her? After everything?" Ethan's smile faltered. Caleb stiffened, clutching Monica's hand. Marcus's jaw tightened. "Vanessa, this is not your place anymore." Her laugh was hollow. "Not my place? I'm their mother, Marcus. My place is wherever my sons are." Caleb's voice, so quiet it nearly vanished, rose from the shadows. "You left us." The words struck Vanessa like a blow. She blinked rapidly, her mask cracking for the first time. Ethan stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You cared more about parties than us. You cared about money. Monica stayed when you didn't. She's our mom now." Vanessa's face twisted, torn between anger and desperation. "Marcus, don't do this." Don't let her replace me. We can fix this. We can start over. Marcus shook his head, his voice firm. You made your choice. You walked away. And tonight, I'm choosing too. I'm choosing love. I'm choosing family. And that means Monica. The silence that followed was sharp, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. She turned on her heel and disappeared into the night, her figure swallowed by the shadows beyond the lanterns. The boys exhaled, clinging tighter to Monica. Ethan whispered fiercely, "Don't ever leave us." Monica held them close, her tears still streaming. "Never, not ever." Marcus kissed her forehead, his own voice breaking. "We're a family now. No matter what ghosts come back, no matter what storms arrive, we're home in each other." The lights shimmered above them, reflecting in their eyes. And though the night had cracked open with confrontation, it ended with something unbreakable, a promise forged not from wealth or image, but from love that had endured every test. The house was quiet after the garden proposal, yet the echo of Vanessa's sudden appearance lingered like smoke that refused to clear. Monica slept fitfully that night, waking at every creak of the mansion's beams. She had said yes to Marcus, yes to Ethan and Caleb, but the shadows of the past pressed harder than the glow of lanterns. By morning, she could no longer ignore it. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the pale band of dawn through the window, when Vanessa walked in. Not with the entitlement of a wife returning home, but with the sharp purpose of someone carrying a weapon, though hers was not steel but truth. "Still here?" Vanessa's voice was brittle, coated with venom. "I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. Women like you cling to opportunity like barnacles." Monica turned, refusing to rise to the bait. "The boys are upstairs. Keep your voice down." Vanessa smirked. "You think this is about them?" "You think you've won because they wrote you some childish note? You don't know Marcus the way I do. You don't know his past." Something in her tone twisted Monica's stomach. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa's eyes gleamed. "Eliza." The name fell like a stone into water, sending ripples Monica had fought for years to suppress. She stiffened. "How do you—" Vanessa's smirk deepened. "You think I didn't do my research when you showed up? You can change your name, but you can't erase history. I know who you are. Eliza Monroe, Marcus's high school sweetheart, the girl who disappeared one summer and never came back." Monica's breath caught. The kitchen seemed to close in around her, the polished marble counters suddenly cold, alien. Vanessa pressed harder. "Do you plan to tell him? Or should I? Because secrets have a way of clawing their way to the surface." Later that evening, Marcus found Monica sitting on the back porch, her arms wrapped around herself as if holding the weight of decades. The boys had already fallen asleep upstairs, exhausted from the excitement of the night before. The house was hushed, yet the silence throbbed. "You've been distant all day," Marcus said gently, lowering himself into the chair beside her. "Talk to me." Her throat worked, but no words came at first. She stared into the dark garden where lanterns still hung, swaying faintly in the wind. Finally, she whispered, "My name isn't really Monica." Marcus blinked. "What do you mean?" "My real name is Eliza Monroe. We knew each other once, years ago, in high school." He frowned, searching her face. "Eliza?" Then recognition sparked, dim at first, then blazing. "Eliza, from Charleston, the girl who— God, you vanished. One day you were gone, and no one knew why." Tears welled in her eyes. "Because I was pregnant, Marcus. With twins." The words knocked the air from his chest. "I was 17, scared and alone," she continued, her voice trembling.
I went into labor early. The hospital told me both babies were stillborn. They told me I had to sign papers and let them go. I thought I buried them that day, and I carried that grief with me every single moment since. Marcus's hands shook as he gripped the arm of his chair. Twins, Eliza, Monica, the boys, Ethan and Caleb, their birthdays. The dates match. Are you saying? She nodded through tears. They're ours, Marcus. I don't know how, but they're not adopted. They're not strangers. They are the sons I thought I lost. The world tilted. Marcus pressed a hand to his mouth, struggling for breath. Images flooded his mind. Ethan's mischievous grin, Caleb's careful thoughtfulness, the inexplicable familiarity he had always felt with them. Pieces of a puzzle that had never fit now locked into place. His voice broke. All this time. They were ours? Monica sobbed, her hands trembling as she covered her face. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know until Vanessa cornered me this morning. I thought... Marcus caught her wrists gently, pulling her hands down. Look at me. You didn't betray me. You didn't betray them. This was done to us. Someone stole our children. Anger simmered beneath his shock, a fury that burned hotter with each second. That hospital. St. Mary's. They lied. They told you our sons had died. Someone took them, sold them, placed them in adoption, I don't know. But I will find out. And I will make them pay. Monica clutched his hand, her tears wetting his skin. I don't care about revenge. I just want to hold them, knowing they're mine. I want them to know I'm their mother. Later that night, Monica slipped into the boys' room. Ethan sprawled across his bed, his arm flung wide, a faint smile lingering on his lips even in sleep. Caleb lay curled on his side, his notebook beside him, as though even dreams needed calculations. She sank to her knees between their beds, tears spilling silently. She reached out, brushing a stray curl from Ethan's forehead, then tracing the soft line of Caleb's cheek. I thought I lost you, she whispered into the quiet. But you were here all along. My boys. My sons. A small movement made her freeze. Caleb stirred, his eyes fluttering open. Monica, he mumbled. Her heart pounded. She forced her voice steady. Go back to sleep, sweetheart. Everything's okay. He blinked. Drowsy but curious. You're crying. She pressed a kiss to his hair. Sometimes people cry when they're really, really happy. His lips curved into a faint smile. Then I hope you cry forever. She stifled a sob as his eyes closed again. When Marcus joined her later, they sat together at the edge of the boys' room, watching their sons sleep. For the first time in years, they were not two broken people crossing paths. They were parents, reunited not by chance, but by fate's cruel and miraculous hand. Marcus whispered, We'll tell them. Soon. When it's right. But first we find out who did this. Monica nodded. Yes. They deserve the truth. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his voice fierce with conviction. We lost them once. We will never lose them again. And as the night deepened, the ghosts of the past rose fully into the light, not to haunt, but to demand justice. The next days passed with a weight that pressed on every corner of the Thompson estate. Though Ethan and Caleb laughed as usual, unaware of the storm brewing, Marcus and Monica moved with a quiet urgency. They had no time to waste. The truth, buried for 7 years beneath forged papers and stolen lives, had to be uncovered. Marcus sat in his study, the glow of a single lamp illuminating a thick file spread across the desk. He had hired investigators, traced records, pulled at every thread.
and every thread led back to one place, St. Mary's Hospital, Atlanta. That was where Monica, then Eliza, had delivered her twins as a terrified teenager. That was where she was told they had died. And that was where the adoption records of Ethan and Caleb had mysteriously surfaced, signed under Marcus's name, but without his knowledge. When Monica entered the room, her face pale but resolute, Marcus looked up. "It's worse than I thought. Not just one nurse, not one mistake. This was orchestrated." She gripped the back of a chair. "By who?" "By Vanessa," he said grimly, "with the help of hospital administrators. She wanted heirs, but not mine with you. She arranged the switch, buried the records, and ensured we believed lies." Monica's knees nearly gave out. She lowered herself into the chair, her hands trembling. "She stole them! She stole our children!" Marcus reached across the desk, covering her hands with his. "She didn't win. They're here, alive. And now, we bring her to justice." 2 weeks later, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. The press had swarmed the story. Tech billionaire's wife accused in shocking adoption scandal. Every seat was filled, reporters craning their necks, whispers running like electricity through the gallery. Ethan and Caleb were kept away, safely at home under the care of Mr. Henry. But Marcus and Monica sat side by side, their hands intertwined beneath the table. They had walked through hell already. This was the final passage. The judge, stern and immovable, entered. Case number 48-203, State of Georgia versus Vanessa Thompson. Vanessa swept into the courtroom like a woman arriving at a gala, her silk dress immaculate, her chin lifted. But the cracks in her confidence showed. Her eyes darted, her lips tightened. She was no longer untouchable. The prosecutor rose, his voice sharp. "Your Honor, this is not merely a case of fraud, this is abduction. 7 years ago, Mrs. Thompson colluded with St. Mary's Hospital to falsify records, convincing a young mother her twin sons had died while arranging for their secret adoption. These boys, Ethan and Caleb Thompson, were stolen from their mother, Eliza Monroe, now Monica Williams, and placed under the guise of legality into the custody of Marcus Thompson. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras clicked. Marcus sat rigid, every muscle tight, his eyes fixed on Vanessa. Monica stared at her hands, fighting tears. The defense attorney stood, smooth and arrogant. "This is an outrageous accusation. My client is a philanthropist, a respected member of Atlanta society. To suggest she orchestrated such a conspiracy is slander. There is no proof." But proof came swiftly. Witness after witness testified. A nurse who had falsified signatures under Vanessa's orders, a hospital clerk who remembered the hush money, an accountant who traced payments through offshore accounts. Then came the documents. Birth certificates altered, adoption papers forged. Each piece struck like a hammer, dismantling the defense. Finally, Monica herself took the stand. She looked small beneath the weight of the room, but her voice was clear. She told the story of being 17, abandoned, terrified, believing her sons had died in the sterile white of a hospital room. She spoke of grief that never left her, of years haunted by empty arms, until she walked into the Thompson mansion and found herself staring into the eyes of the very boys she thought she had lost. Her voice cracked as she turned toward Vanessa. "You didn't just steal babies. You stole my son's chance to know their mother. You let them grow up thinking love could be bought and sold, thinking everyone leaves. And you almost destroyed them." The courtroom fell silent, every heart pierced by her words. Marcus's chest ached with pride and anguish. He wanted to leap from his seat, to hold her, but he stayed rooted, his gaze burning into Vanessa. The defense faltered. The evidence was too strong. The lies had unraveled. At last, the judge's gavel struck.
Vanessa Thompson, you are hereby found guilty of fraud, conspiracy, and child abduction. You will be remanded into custody immediately. Vanessa's composure shattered. Marcus! She screamed as officers closed in. You'll regret this! You think she'll save you? She'll ruin you just like she ruined me! But Marcus did not flinch. He rose, taking Monica's hand as Vanessa was led away. The only thing I regret is letting you near them at all. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust forward. Marcus shielded Monica with his arm, guiding her through the chaos. How does it feel to know the twins are your biological children? One reporter cried. Monica paused, her tears shimmering. She looked straight into the cameras.
It feels like resurrection, like a miracle I thought I'd never have.
Marcus tightened his hold on her, pride swelling. When they reached the car, she collapsed into his arms, sobbing into his chest.
It's over. It's finally over.
No, Marcus whispered, kissing her hair. It's just beginning. We have them back now, and nothing can take them from us again. That evening, the twins waited anxiously by the window, their noses pressed to the glass. When the black sedan pulled into the driveway, they bolted to the door. Dad! Monica! Ethan cried, leaping into their arms the moment they entered. Caleb followed, quieter but no less fierce in his embrace. Are you okay? Caleb asked, his eyes darting with worry. Marcus knelt, pulling them close. We're more than okay. We're free! Monica dropped to her knees, tears streaming. She cupped their faces, her voice trembling. There's something you need to know. Something we've been waiting to tell you. Ethan blinked, his eyes wide. What is it? She swallowed, her heart hammering. I'm not just your nanny. I'm not just someone who stayed. I'm your mother. Your real mother. The boys froze. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. Caleb's eyes filled with tears. That's why you never left, Caleb whispered. Ethan's voice cracked. We thought we didn't have a mom. Monica pulled them into her arms, sobbing. You always had one. You just didn't know. And I will never, ever let you go again. Ethan cried openly, burying his face in her shoulder. Caleb clung to her hand, whispering over and over. Finally, finally. Marcus watched, his own vision blurred. For all the wealth he had ever known, no treasure compared to this moment. And as they stood there, four souls bound together by love and loss, Marcus knew the battle for truth had ended. Justice had been served, and a family, broken, stolen, scattered, had at last been made whole. The air in Atlanta carried the fragrance of early spring, fresh with magnolia blossoms, soft with promise. Weeks had passed since the courtroom thundered with Vanessa's conviction, and though the press still whispered, the Thompson estate was quieter now. It no longer echoed with fear or pretenses. It pulsed with life. On the morning of the wedding, Piedmont Park unfolded like a living canvas. The great oaks stood tall, their leaves glinting in the sunlight, and a gentle breeze rippled across Lake Claramere. White chairs lined the grass, simple and unadorned. Marcus had insisted, this is not about spectacle. This is about us. Ethan and Caleb darted between the rows, dressed in matching suits that made them look older than 7, though their mischievous grins betrayed them. They carried baskets full of flower petals, their pockets crammed with extras, just in case. Don't use them all before the ceremony, Marcus warned gently, adjusting Caleb's bow tie. Ethan smirked. But Dad, weddings need lots of petals, like a whole blizzard. Marcus chuckled, smoothing Ethan's hair. Save the blizzard for your mom. The word mom still sent shivers through the boys. It had been weeks, yet they whispered it like a spell, testing its power. And every time, Monica's smile lit up their world. Now she stood under a canopy of branches, her simple ivory gown flowing like water, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She held no bouquet. She had insisted her hands must be free to hold the boys. When the music began, soft strings carried by the wind, the twins ran down the aisle ahead of her, flinging petals with wild joy. Guests laughed as the boys shouted in unison, "Here comes Mom!" Monica followed, her eyes glistening. Every step felt like resurrection. Once she had walked away from a hospital with empty arms, believing her children were gone forever. Now she walked toward them, toward Marcus, toward a family forged through fire and healed by love. Marcus's eyes brimmed as she approached. He had faced boardrooms, battles, betrayals, but nothing compared to the sight of the woman he had loved, the mother of his children, walking toward him under God's sky. When she reached him, Ethan pressed himself against her side. Caleb took her hand, and Marcus whispered so only she could hear, "You've always been the missing piece." The officiant cleared his throat, smiling. "We are gathered today not just to witness a union of two souls, but the creation of a home that wealth cannot buy, that betrayal cannot destroy, a home built from love, laughter, and the miracle of second chances." The vows were simple. Marcus turned to Monica, his voice steady though his hands trembled. "I once believed success could keep me safe. But it was you who taught me that safety is in love, not in walls of marble or numbers in a bank. You gave our boys their mother back. You gave me my heart back. Today I vow never to measure life in fortune, but only in moments with you." Monica's tears shimmered. She looked at him, then at Ethan and Caleb, who stood proudly at their side. "For years, I thought I had lost everything. But then I found two little boys with eyes that felt like home, and a man whose heart carried the same scars as mine. Today I vow never to run, never to hide, never to let fear steal another day. You are my family, my forever." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Marcus kissed her, gentle but certain, as the twins whooped and threw petals into the air, shouting, "We have a mom! We have a real mom!" Guests laughed, some wept, and the family of four embraced beneath the canopy of trees. The reception was small, held beneath a white tent at the park's edge. No chandeliers, no polished speeches, just laughter, food, and the sound of children running barefoot across the grass. Ethan stood on a chair to raise a toast with sparkling cider. "To our mom and dad, and to purple pancakes forever." The crowd erupted in applause, glasses raised high. Caleb tugged Marcus's sleeve and whispered, "Can I say something too?" Marcus nodded, lifting him onto the chair beside Ethan. Caleb's voice was softer, more deliberate. "I used to think everyone leaves, but now I know some people stay. And we're not broken anymore. We're whole." Monica covered her mouth, her tears spilling freely. Marcus wrapped his arms around his sons, his heart overflowing. Later, when the sun dipped low and the guests departed, Marcus and Monica walked hand in hand through the park. The boys ran ahead, their laughter carrying across the field, petals still tangled in their hair. Marcus stopped, watching them. "We nearly lost them. We nearly lost everything." Monica leaned against him. "But we didn't. God gave them back to us." He kissed her temple, his voice low with reverence. "We thought we had lost each other too. But here we are. Not empty-handed, doubly blessed." They watched as Ethan tackled Caleb in the grass, both boys rolling and laughing, the petals scattering around them like confetti from heaven. Monica whispered, "This is what home feels like." Marcus nodded, his arm tightening around her. Yes. Finally. Home. At last. As dusk deepened, the four of them walked together toward the park's edge. Ethan held Monica's left hand, Caleb her right. Marcus walked beside them, their steps falling into rhythm. Passers-by smiled at the sight. A man once hardened by wealth, a woman once broken by loss, and two boys once convinced they would always be abandoned, now bound together by love that had endured lies, betrayal, and time. When they reached the park's gate, Marcus paused, lifting his sons into his arms. "We thought we'd lost everything," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of the years. "But God gave us back more than we ever dreamed. 2 sons, a second chance, a home." And as the four walked hand in hand into the fading light, the world seemed to whisper the truth they had fought so hard to find. Love is the only fortune that cannot be stolen. And so, the mansion that once echoed with silence and emptiness was filled at last with the sound of laughter, belonging, and the warmth of a family reborn. Marcus, Monica, Ethan, and Caleb discovered that true wealth was never written in bank accounts or measured in marble walls, but in the quiet moments of togetherness, the purple pancakes at breakfast, the bedtime stories whispered softly, the simple act of never leaving. This was not the story of a billionaire saving a broken home. It was the story of a family saving each other, a story where betrayal could not outlast forgiveness, and where love proved to be the only fortune no one could steal. Thank you, dear friends, for staying with us until the very end of this journey. Your presence here is what keeps these stories alive, what turns words into a shared fire of warmth. If this story touched your heart, we'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. It means more to a small channel like ours than you can imagine. Together, we'll keep telling stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that love is always enough. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next story waiting just for you.